I'm Jeremy Wade, biologist and underwater detective.
Yeah.
For over 30 years, I've been hunting down freshwater killers.
There are people disappearing all the time.
Mysterious giants that sometimes take out human victims in remote corners of the world. But have I been overlooking darker and deadlier creatures, lurking unseen in lakes and rivers? Stealthy attackers I can't ignore anymore.
She was vomiting up worms.
I'm on the hunt for a different kind of river monster. The kind that invades and devours from the inside.
The skin used to fall away.
I'd be foolish to think I'm immune, so this mission is personal. The chances are I'm harboring one of these silent assassins. It's time to face the truth.
We've seen something.
Most of the places I go to hunt river monsters are in the tropics. Africa, Asia, and the part of the world where I spent most time, the Amazon in South America, where I've explored huge stretches of this enormous river system, including places where most of the locals don't go. When I travel, I get inoculated against all the bacteria and viruses that might attack me and potentially kill, such as hepatitis, typhoid, even rabies. But what I can't get vaccinated against are parasites. So for me and the crew, it's all about taking routine precautions, simple things that are vitally important, such as keeping insect bites to a minimum by covering up and using repellent, filtering water before drinking, and washing hands before eating. But even if you do all these things, you can't guarantee that stealthy invaders aren't going to get to you. And parasites just love the places where I fish.
When I'm in the zone, something primal takes over.
I'm gonna have to go for a swim.
I don't think about anything except the fish I'm trying to land, giving parasites ample opportunity to get inside me.
One parasite I didn't avoid is malaria. I caught it in Africa, in the Congo. Suddenly, I was alternating between uncontrollable shivers and burning hot fever. My urine turned almost black and I became semi-blind. Everything was burnt out and overexposed. I remember lying on the ground and people stepping over my body, actually saying that I was going to die. Luckily, I came back from the brink.
But malaria is just one of a vast number of parasites out there. And I have to confess, I haven't given them much thought because I feel healthy. But recently, crew members have come back from my missions with monstrous stowaways.
James was struck down by schistosomiasis caused by a parasitic flatworm.
It invaded the blood vessels around his bladder, where it reproduced rapidly, laying thousands of microscopic eggs, which were excreted in the urine. But in some cases, the eggs can get trapped in the body tissues, causing immune reactions and progressive damage to the organs.
Luckily, he was diagnosed and treated, and now he's okay. Doctors also discovered that one of our directors, Dominic, had a white blood cell count that had gone through the roof, the result of a roundworm known as strongyloides.
A parasitic worm that gets into the lungs, then climbs up the windpipe to be swallowed back down the food pipe into the guts, where it breeds. Here, the worms thread themselves in and out of the gut lining, causing inflammation. They can live in the body undetected for many years, but when the immune system is down, that's when the parasite can strike a deadly blow. Luckily, Dominic was diagnosed early and treated.
The thing is, none of the crew members go to all my fishing locations. They rotate on and off. But I go to every single place, so the risk that I'm exposed to is much more than any one of them.
So is there a battle being waged inside my body that I'm completely unaware of? I need to uncover the truth. It's time to find out what's living inside me. To do that, I'm going to need some specialised help. These parasites are not your run-of-the-mill invaders and are rarely found in the US or Europe. And some of the best parasitic disease experts can be found at the world's oldest school of tropical medicine in Liverpool. For generations, explorers have set off from Liverpool's docks to exotic destinations. Those that returned often carried stowaways inside their bodies. The Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine was set up to treat the nightmarish symptoms that sometimes erupted. And over 100 years later, it's still one of the most highly regarded specialist centres for tropical diseases. To get to the bottom of what might be multiplying inside me, I'm meeting Dr. Nick Beeching.
Hello. Hi, Jeremy. Nice to meet you. Come on in. I understand you go paddling around in rivers some of the time.
That is the thing, yes. The people I work with have come back with things. My sort of exposure is many times everybody else. I spent a lot of time in South America, and one place I spent a lot of time, there are floating houses on the water.
Oh, yes.
And everything goes into the water, and that's the water you drink. Although you'll paddle out in the dugout, you'll get your water from the middle, you'll bring it in, you let it settle and all that. And I thought I must have picked up something there because all the local people, whenever they went to get checked, they always had something. I'm thinking the arithmetic is possibly not stacking up in my favour, so I just wanted to get.
So let's start with a bit of a travel history, shall we? Where have you been?
Brazil. Spent a lot of time in Brazil, Colombia, Guyana, Ecuador, Suriname, Argentina, Nicaragua, Norway, Ukraine, Ethiopia, Spain, Uganda, Kenya, yes, Tanzania, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Congo.
Okay, I've almost filled the page.
Right.
Asia.
Asia, well, India, Thailand, yes, Cambodia, Australia.
This is all in the last how many years?
Well, most of it's been in the last sort of 8 years, but some of it was before that.
Okay.
Right.
To see if my travels have left any obvious symptoms, the doctor needs to give me a preliminary physical examination.
Just take a big breath in, stop, and let it right out now. And stop breathing. Okay, breathe normally. So that all sounds hollow, like it should. That's your lung. So we'll just feel now. So there's nothing to suggest you've got a large spleen there. We'll just have a look for your liver now. So you can just feel the bottom of your liver. It's just below your ribs. Feels quite normal.
Okay.
Despite the fact that you've not got any obvious disease, the parasites are pretty clever. They can hide away. So we need to do some special tests to see if we can find them. And some of them are sort of special to our laboratory that wouldn't do elsewhere in other places.
My blood will be tested for signs of infection to see if a parasite has invaded my bloodstream.
Okay.
But that's not all that the doctor wants to test.
Right, all I've got to do now is fill that up and that. Well, although I look okay outwardly and I feel okay, statistically the odds are that there is something invisible going on inside me. The thing is, I'm not going to get the results now. Everything's gone off to the lab. I'm just going to have to wait for a while.
As a trained biologist, I'm compelled to mount a mission of my own. To find out what parasitic enemies are out there and what could be inside me. The region where I've spent more time in the water than any other is the Amazon. And there's no better place to begin my investigation than the city at the heart of the Amazon, Manaus. The surrounding tropical waters are so prolific that the concentration of fish species is around 10,000 times that of the ocean. But this region is also a mecca for a collection of deadly parasitic monsters that could have caught me. Ever since the beginning of human history, right up until the present day, the human species has been drawn to the water. We use the river to travel on. We also use it as a source of food. Now, parasites are drawn to us for exactly the same reasons. Our blood vessels take them where they want to go, and they also give them a rich, very concentrated source of food. I've lost track of the amount of time I've spent in the Amazon. When I add it up, it's probably more than 1,000 days. So I need to identify what parasites could be living inside me that may have hitched a ride from here. The first contender is a flesh-eating parasite that's just raging through these parts of the Amazon. It's a microbe called Leishmania. What starts off as fairly harmless-looking sores can develop into horrifying leaking wounds, which the body's defences just can't heal. People tell me there's a clinic nearby that's treating this deadly disease. It was set up when this part of the Amazon opened up for business. Huge environmental changes took hold, and the spread of parasites to humans also exploded. This lady here, she's got something on her heel, and because about 50% of the people in the village have leishmaniasis, she's concerned that this might be. So what's happening, this is a test to see if that is actually the case. Right, it's obviously quite a painful process because it's scraping material out of the lesions. To detect whether this woman is harbouring Leishmania, this tissue specimen needs to be examined under the microscope.
So what are you seeing? Que está vendo aqui?
Ok, encontrei parasita, deu positivo de leishmaniose.
Yeah, this is a positive test. So it's now a case of starting treatment.
But she will have to wait, because many other people in this region have also been infected. And the doctors already have a long list of patients. Elephantiasis first thought this was just a nasty spot that wouldn't go away. But it's what it can develop into that's truly shocking. There's another one here, there's three. Tá com quanto tempo que tá aqui? Tá pouco tempo?
Tá quase com mês.
The girl's actually only been living in this region here for about a month, something like that. But everybody else in the family, it sounds like they've all had it. Her sores are in the early stages, and she's being treated before they grow far worse.
Porque vale a pena porque a gente vai evitar, né?
She's saying, it seems that she's well aware of what this can develop into. Leishmaniasis is tough to treat. Elephantiasis will need a highly disciplined schedule of 55 injections of chemotherapy-like drugs over the next 20 days. She hopes this will prevent her sores from turning into grotesque, debilitating wounds. But there's no guarantee. What the doctor's saying is it's about the daily habit of going to the water to bathe in the river, basically. That's where the insects are. Because flesh-eating leishmaniasis is spread from person to person by tiny blood-sucking sandflies. When the parasite entered Elephantias's body, it hijacked her immune system by attacking her body's own defense cells. It then devoured them from the inside while using them to travel through her body. Without this vital treatment, the parasite can rapidly multiply, making Elephantiasis a deadly carrier and turning her small lesions into monstrous leaking wounds. If you live here, your chances of catching flesh-eating leishmaniasis, well, it's almost unavoidable. Now, I don't live here, but I have spent a lot of time in places like this, and although leishmaniasis has been in the back of my mind, I'm now starting to wonder if I haven't worried about it enough. But for now, my blood samples are still being examined back in England, and I just have to wait and see if I'm also harbouring this flesh-eating parasite. Meanwhile, in Manaus, I get a call from the hospital. A fisherman named Ferro, who lives deep in the Amazon forest, has just been brought in to the specialists. the Leishmania parasite is storming through his body. It's out of control, and it's eating him alive.
What was the first thing you noticed? Que foi a primeira coisa que reparou?
E apareceu uma bolhazinha no meio com uns carocinhos ao redor.
He first noticed something 5 years ago, a small lesion on his back, and he had some treatment then. It got a bit better,
Nasceu de novo já,
but then it came back, so it's spreading.
uma queimação.
He says that it itches, but there's also pain as well. He says it's like a burning.
What surprises me is that it appeared 5 years ago and he was treated at the time. So why is it so bad today?
Em torno de 50% dos pacientes não respondem a primeiro tratamento.
He's saying that it's quite common for the patient not to respond to the first treatment. It will appear to heal,
Para voltar,
but then the disease will come back.
In Ferro's case, we're talking about a 5-year gap, but the doctor says the parasite can lie dormant for up to 30 years, or even more.
Não, aqui começou agora, tá uns 2 meses.
The other thing that's happened recently is that
Tinha negócio pelo lado de dentro.
he's felt something in his nose, and he says he's worried about that.
Depois dessa aqui.
They've done a biopsy just yesterday, and they found that it's actually spread there as well.
For Ferro, this could be the worst case scenario, because now that the deadly parasite has reached his nose, it can lead to total destruction of the mucous membranes, resulting in suffocation. In other words, this could be fatal. For Ferro to have any chance of survival, an intensive drug treatment has to start immediately. But there's no guarantee it will work. It's disturbing to know that this parasite survived dormant in Ferro's body for 5 years. It's really brought home the risks to me.
Well, I must have been bitten over the years by hundreds and hundreds of sandflies. Now, leishmaniasis is something that I have known about, but to actually see where that can lead, it really does give you pause for thought to actually see the effects.
I was hoping that coming here would give me reassurance, but in fact it's making me more concerned about what might crop up in my results.
Sometimes the crew and I get absolutely hammered by sandflies. I've got a picture somewhere. Here we go. This is our camera assistant, Lorne, and I remember him just being awake all night because he was having to scratch these bites. And because he was bitten so much, the chance of deadly parasites getting inside was something that was really worrying. And it turns out he was okay, he was lucky, but a parasite only has to get lucky once. If it does, this can change the rest of your life, and not in a good way, as I saw when I went to the hospital.
I need to make a list of what could be living inside me. Leishmaniasis is a definite contender. But I've heard about something in a more remote part of the Amazon that sounds even more horrifying. So I'm leaving Manaus and heading to Tabatinga, where Brazil meets Colombia and Peru. I've been here before, investigating bodies with strange marks resembling burns.
This is the fish that is responsible for killing people, what we know in English as the electric eel.
This river monster may have electrocuted 3 men, but what I'm hearing about now is infesting a whole region. I need to know more, so I'm meeting Dr. Waldry, a field physician who's been based out here for 15 years.
Microscópico, sim, microscópico, não dá para ver, né? Apenas os vermes adultos que a pessoa vê. Então ela vê, então ela acredita.
He's talking about a parasite called the Ascaris roundworm. Its microscopic eggs are easily ingested, and it's thought 70% of people in the Amazon are infected. The adult parasites multiply in the intestine and normally lie undetected for years. But sometimes it's a very different story. quite a surprising fact. He's just said that the incidence of intestinal parasites, this Ascaris roundworm, is actually higher than the incidence of malaria, but people generally aren't aware that it's there. It's something totally invisible most of the time. However, a woman who lives near here has a shocking story to tell about her young daughter, Yonida.
Sim, sou eu.
O que foi que aconteceu com sua filha?
Não sei. Quando ela tá com dor de barriga, né?
Her daughter had just a stomachache that just persisted. It just went on. And at first, there was discussion in the family. They thought it was maybe some kind of curse.
Era feitiço, né? Feitiço.
But eventually, they decided, no, let's take her to the doctor. The doctors were baffled. They did an X-ray. They did ultrasound. But actually, that didn't really reveal anything. But it turned out that when she was being examined, she started vomiting. And she was vomiting up worms. Yonida was taken for emergency surgery.
Foi assim. Só Deus ajude nós.
Apparently one of the medical staff said to her, look, you know, it's in God's hands whether she survives or not. She says that she's got a picture that she wants to show me.
Okay.
Oh, gosh. Yonida's intestine was packed full of Ascaris roundworms. You imagine maybe just a few. This is an absolute infestation. It's a solid mass that came out. The child must have unknowingly swallowed microscopic eggs that were living in the soil or water. Once inside, they lodged in their breeding grounds, the intestines, where they multiplied and grew into adult worms, gorged on her undigested food and stole her body's nutrients. At the same time, eggs were passed out with the feces, so that the life cycle could begin again in another unsuspecting victim. Oh, I'm so sorry that... Gosh, this must have been such a shock. They removed 33 inches of her small intestine. That's probably actually more than her height at the time. They were very shocked because they'd never seen anything like this before. They never knew that this kind of thing existed. And I think possibly, maybe what's going on is that normally this is something that stays well hidden inside you. And the good news is that she's running around now. She's a lot better. The thing that's becoming clear to me is that I could easily have these parasitic worms and not even know it. Because most parasites have a fundamentally different tactic from the giant fish predators I'm more used to. What predators do is catch, subdue, kill, and then consume their victims as quickly as possible. Parasites do the exact opposite. A successful parasite will keep its victim alive as long as possible, slowly feeding off it. The Ascaris roundworm is no exception, and these things have had lots of opportunities to get inside me. I'm particularly thinking of the time I was in Cambodia, investigating the pincer-like bite of the pufferfish. I was in these debris-filled waters of the Mekong River in what was essentially a communal toilet. The perfect breeding ground for parasitic worms. Thinking about it, I have to say the likelihood of having Ascaris roundworms inside me has to be high, considering my exposure. It's making me even more concerned about what my lab results will reveal. But there are some parasites that you don't need a microscope to see. On a previous investigation in the Amazon, I encountered a parasitic fish lurking beneath these waters, the candiru. Now, normally the candiru swims inside the gills of a big fish and drinks the blood. But there have been cases of mistaken identity, and that's what happened with this man, Silvio.
Já foi na hora que eu fui urinar, quando eu me espantei e o bicho já estava entrando.
While he was relieving himself, suddenly he said he just had a bit of a shock, and the first thing he knew was that the fish was already inside, only, just the end of its tail was out.
The candiru entered Silvio in search of a blood meal. Its mistake would result in an unprecedented medical procedure that lasted 2 hours.
The endoscope was put in the end of his penis into the urethra. The tail of the fish was about here, about an inch in, and so the head of it would have been somewhere like here. And then what happened was that the pincers were gradually, manipulated out of the hole here. There we go. Grabbed hold of the fish just in front of the tail, and then using the camera, and then the whole apparatus just gradually, very delicately moved out. This is a somewhat momentous and possibly delicate occasion. I'm bringing Silvio back to meet his fish. Quer pegar assim?
Não.
I just asked Silvio if he would like to handle it, and a very definite no. I think once was enough. This is one parasite. If you've got it, you're absolutely going to know about it. I'd be in such pain, I would just be incapable of doing anything. So I can safely cross the candiru off my list.
Candiru attacks are very rare, but there's another visible parasite you're much more likely to find hiding in your body.
It's this Botfly larva. There are flies that have developed this particular strategy in pretty much all of the tropical locations that I visited.
I've come across something similar looking in Guyana when I was hunting the laulau. It's known as the palm grub.
That's big. Yeah, it's trying to bite me, actually. It's really sharp because they actually cut through this hard nut. It's just a sack of amino acids and goodness.
Fishermen seek them out before they metamorphose into beetles because they make the perfect fishing bait.
And the fish are coming already.
Yeah.
First time.
Yes.
Look at that.
The botfly larva, like the palm grub, also has an unusual home.
To survive, a botfly larva needs a supply of nourishing blood and a warm place to grow, which makes me, or you, the perfect incubator.
But a botfly is too big and conspicuous to drop its eggs off itself, so it ambushes a mosquito in mid-flight, laying its eggs and gluing them to the underside of the mosquito. When the mosquito then lands on human skin, the body heat melts the glue and the eggs fall off, hatching into larvae that burrow into the skin, where they grow bigger and fatter.
One of our cameramen, James, after we'd been filming crocodiles in Botswana, he noticed something a bit like a spot, a little bump, and he was horrified when he pulled out this, the early stages of a fly larva, from the skin on his stomach.
Although unsightly, the larva will usually leave its host unscathed. But I've been told about a woman nearby who has fallen victim to a botfly in an unusually horrifying way. And it's making me question whether I've mistakenly overlooked a darker and deadlier side to this common parasite. Anisa is suffering from nightmarish symptoms.
Que foi que causou este?
Aura.
So this was caused by a botfly, which is normally quite a trivial thing, but this is absolutely worst case scenario for that.
If left undisturbed, the botfly larva will normally remain in the body for about 6 weeks. It then burrows out of the skin and falls to the ground. 4 weeks later, an adult botfly emerges. It usually leaves its human host unhurt, but in Anisa's case, this didn't happen. The larva is potentially still in there, and has caused a secondary and deadly infection that appears to be attacking her brain. To get to a specialised hospital is a very long journey, and it's probably too late for treatment. I'm told that Anisa wishes to spend what little time she has left at home with her family.
I'm actually still trying to process this. That was a botfly that caused that, and that is something that's normally very trivial. You know, it's a bit unsightly, it hatches, it goes, and that's it. But this is, by all accounts, going to be fatal. It should never, ever have got to that stage. Even if they do get treated, the people along these rivers are straight back in the same environment, facing the same deadly invaders. Now, I know I don't have a botfly larva because it's very easy to check for the telltale signs. But there's one other thing which is becoming very clear, which is actually pretty frightening. And that is, when I'm in this environment, for me to keep free of parasites, I've got to be lucky every single day, but the parasite only needs to be lucky once.
One parasite that nearly took me out is thought to have killed more people than all the wars in human history: malaria.
That experience is just burnt into my memory. It was back in 1990. I was unsuccessfully trying to catch a Goliath tigerfish from the Congo. And although I was taking anti-malarials, I was just bitten so much that a number of days later, the fever just erupted.
At times, my clothes were soaked in sweat. At other times, even in sweltering heat, the disease sent me into uncontrollable shivers.
And after losing count of the number of days that I'd suffered, I took the pharmaceutical equivalent of a nuclear bomb. That probably saved my life.
I know malaria is rife in Brazil around the town of Tabatinga, but I'm curious to know how this deadly disease is viewed here.
Com licença, já teve malária?
Sempre dá.
Só uma. Só que em malária também aqui?
E daí é muito pela sujeira.
What she's saying is there's a big problem here.
Vixe, muitas vezes. Malaria.
She's had malaria twice, and you know, it's all the mosquitoes around in the atmosphere here.
Although curable with modern medicine, one more bite and you could have it again. It's a lottery.
Quantas vezes?
7 vezes.
7 vezes. Yeah, this man has had malaria 7 times. He went to a medical post, they treated it.
Só que ela voltou.
He said it didn't work. He actually had a traditional remedy, and he said that cleared it up, and it's not come back for 10 years.
He says if I want to understand how malaria is sometimes treated in this remote part of the Amazon, I need to visit a ticuna shaman a few miles upstream. His patients today are 2 young girls, Maria and Diane, who were struck down by the disease only a few days ago.
So what we've done, we've actually cut a piece of vine. That's then going to be boiled up with water to make a preparation to give to the patient.
Once injected into the bloodstream, the parasites travelled to the liver, where they multiplied. Legions of new parasites then spread into the bloodstream and attacked the red blood cells. It's when these cells burst that the fever and nausea start. This pattern of destruction repeats every 48 hours and can eventually lead to death by clogging up the vessels that carry blood to the brain and other vital organs. The shaman's job is to break the cycle and destroy this powerful enemy, using remedies like this. Such traditional medicines have been used by Amazon tribes for hundreds of years. And one of the barks is the source of quinine, a modern anti-malarial drug that we use in the West.
It's coming up to that time when the mosquitoes start flying, so I'm well covered up, and then the bits that aren't covered, repellent on.
This is a US military chemical used in the Vietnam War and commonly known as DEET. I'm told the Tikuna believe that the smoke and singing will call the spirits to help administer healing, while this medicinal remedy will attack the malarial parasites and eventually purge the disease from the body.
With any illness, it's not just your body, it's your mind. Particularly something like malaria. It's a powerful disease. It's almost like there's a sort of a battle raging inside your body. Sometimes you're winning. Sometimes it's the malaria that's winning. If you haven't had malaria, those girls, looking at them, they look fine, but what happens is it intensifies and then it quietens down and then you actually feel better. And if you didn't know what it was, you'd think maybe that you're cured, but then it comes back and it can come back so badly. Even if it's not going to kill you, you actually want to die. It can be that bad. My results should be in any time now, but I need to stay and investigate one final thing, elephantiasis.
Most people think of this man, Joseph Merrick, better known as the Elephant Man, when they think of elephantiasis. But his condition was symptomatic of a genetic disorder, not a disease he caught.
Elephantiasis is commonly the result of lymphatic filariasis, a massive invasion of a microscopic parasitic worm. Like malaria, the parasites are transmitted by mosquitoes, but unlike malaria, it can be many years before you realise that anything is wrong. But once it strikes, it causes debilitating and disfiguring deformities. And if that's not bad enough, these people often become social outcasts. Now, I'm not afraid to take on apex predators like bull sharks, Goliath tigerfish, but this invisible parasitic monster quite literally turns my stomach. Because once you've got elephantiasis, it's a life sentence.
But I've discovered a clinic, the only one in Brazil, that may have found a remedy. I'm travelling nearly 2,000 miles southeast to São José do Rio Preto. I've been invited to the clinic to meet Raimundo, a current patient.
So, Jeremy? Prazer, eu posso sentar?
A primeira vez que fui em Manaus já faz mais ou menos 15 anos. Mas depois eu já retornei.
Right, this dates back quite a few years, 15 years or so.
E aí, nessas andanças de jogos escolares...
Raimundo was working as a therapeutic masseur. He was mainly treating football players. There was a tournament in Manaus, but in between the games, there was some time off.
Raimundo remembers that he went to a local creek in the early evening with some of his fellow players to relax and cool down. What seemed like a normal event led to unimaginable horror.
Uma área que é muito mosquito. Muito.
He recalls being bitten by lots of mosquitoes, but like most places in the Amazon, their presence is common, and being bitten is just a way of life. But on that day, there were more mosquitoes than usual, and an infected one bit Raimundo, releasing parasitic worm larvae into his bloodstream, where they travelled into his lymph vessels, a vital part of the body's circulatory system.
Não, eu passei 2 dias, inclusive.
And he says it was literally a matter of days
A perna começou a inchar.
that he noticed something with his left leg. It started swelling. As well as the swelling, he said it was also... Esquenta.
Muito.
A sensation of heat. He said it was almost like it was burning.
Undetected, the worms had grown to 3 or 4 inches long. These adult worms then mated and produced millions more larvae. During the day, these larvae lay low in the lymphatic system. But at night, the drop in Raimundo's body temperature triggered the larvae to move out into the bloodstream, where they could be easily picked up by biting mosquitoes, spreading the disease to another victim.
E com essa proporção já grandona assim, Depois de uns 10 anos pra cá, foi.
After about 10 years,
Ficou insuportável, o caso insuportável.
it was actually almost unbearable.
Aí que veio a complicação,
The skin used to fall away,
deu até em bicho.
and he actually got sort of infestations of other parasites in the skin, and particularly in his foot. So it sounded
Coisas horríveis.
pretty horrible. Over time, the adult worms clogged up the lymph vessels in his leg. Fluid built up, causing gigantic and horrifying swellings. With powerful drugs, Raimundo was eventually freed of the parasite, but irreversible damage had already been done.
Inchando mais e doendo.
He said there's no way that this can be stopped, there's no way that I can do anything about it. He said he got just really, really depressed, he prayed a lot,
Até para viver.
almost lost the will to live, and this went on for 20 years. It's only now, to be precise 19 days ago, that Raimundo arrived here at Dr. Godoy's clinic. For the first time, he's receiving proper treatment. It's having a profound and noticeable effect. This disease is difficult for some people to look at, but the tough part for me is knowing that Raimundo has to live with it every day. Now, I mean, this is very hard to believe, but this is actually a considerable improvement on when Raimundo first came in here. When he first came, Dr. Godoy couldn't touch his hands. He couldn't get his arms all the way around the leg. There was a gap of about a foot, something like that. So already a dramatic improvement. And the aim is to get this leg equal to the other one. In order to achieve that, Dr. Godoy has designed a simple and effective treatment.
Fica fácil. Segura a peça. Para fazer uma bandagem.
All of this extra bulk, most of it is liquid. The skin obviously stretches to accommodate that. So in fact it is possible to get rid of this quite quickly. First, the leg is wrapped in bandages. Then it's laced into this, a special type of corset. The compression device gently squeezes the leg, forcing the lymph fluid out as the corset is tightened up throughout the day. The leg is also raised slightly, the gravity helps that process. And then every hour or so, he's going to go and relieve himself because what's happening to that fluid? The kidneys are filtering it, they're processing it, it's being eliminated from the body. Dr. Godoy's simple methods have provided a true revolution in the treatment of elephantiasis. His results with past patients have been nothing short of miraculous. The hope now is that Raimundo will be his next success. I'm just trying to put myself in Raimundo's position, and the fact is I actually can't. The odds were just ridiculous. One mosquito biting him. And I think if that was me, I don't think I would have survived mentally, spiritually, to arrive at the point that he has eventually arrived at now, where finally, after all this time, there is hope. This investigative journey has hurled me out of my comfort zone. And although I've spent more than 30 years getting up close and personal to large, toothy, flesh-eating apex predators, what I've witnessed with these monstrous parasites is making me wonder whether my world is about to be turned inside out. It's definitely time to go back to Liverpool and find out what microscopic monsters are living inside me. I guess this is the moment of truth.
You've been to so many countries. I've got lots of results, so I'll cut to the chase and we'll just go through them, really. Leishmaniasis. You haven't picked that up. Malaria.
I had this a long time ago, but I recovered.
Those tests are all negative. We looked in your urine to see if you had eggs of schistosomiasis, bilharzia.
Something that I've definitely been exposed to because one of my crew members had it.
So there's no blood in your urine, and you'll be pleased to know no parasites in your urine either.
But I'm dreading the next one.
The filariasis.
This is the one that I find the most horrifying.
Was negative.
This seems almost too good to be true.
Looked at the stool samples, no features of any worms, which was one of the things you were worried about. But we've seen something. A number of parasites. We found some amoebae in the stool, and these are things that can cause amoebic dysentery, a severe diarrhea.
I'm being told that in my body I have a parasitic river monster. It has invaded my intestinal lining and could be quietly attacking my body's cells and devouring them, while creating a protective cyst around itself that is resistant to my body's immune system. Something that could be a ruthless killer is living inside me.
But there are two kinds.
The lab ran an extra test to be sure what type I have.
You've got the much more common harmless kind.
So I'm looking all right, you say, and I'm feeling okay. I mean, is it possible to get rid of that, or is that something you just sort of live with?
Yeah, most people live with it, but if we think it's causing a problem, it's relatively easy to treat with some antibiotics. And I would have been astonished if we didn't find this, given your travel history. A surprisingly clear bill of health, given the number of countries you've been to and the amount of exposure that you've told me about in those various countries.
I feel like I've gotten away by the skin of my teeth from some of the world's deadliest parasites. I have to say I am so relieved that despite all my travels, I have remained pretty safe. So, does that mean I should quit while I'm ahead? Well, as with all my investigations, knowledge is power. And although this might sound strange, I actually feel better equipped now to keep safe in the future. It's been a very personal journey to hunt down these microscopic river monsters. And I feel I've been very lucky. But for the people I met, their stories continue. Ferro, the fisherman, returned home 2 months later with the all clear from leishmaniasis, and the doctors remain hopeful. Yonida, the little girl who had the horrific infestation of intestinal worms, is miraculously leading a normal life and has just started kindergarten. Very sadly, Anisa, the elderly woman with the Botfly infection, died a few weeks after I saw her. Maria and Diane, the two girls with malaria, made a full recovery. And Raimundo, after 20 years of living with his disfiguring and debilitating disease, is back at home. His leg is nearly down to normal size. At last, he's regained his independence and dignity.